So this is the role that I played in experiencing a soul go to hell. I'm gonna try to keep this story in one video. But this was high school years. This was around 2016, 2017. And my best friend at the time, she had this boyfriend, right? And we'll call him Eddie. So, her and Eddie had their own thing going on. I was kind of out of their business, for real. Until it started to get bad. He became a very, very toxic, overbearing boyfriend. He knew that we got out of school at like 3:15, so he would call her every day at 3:15 to make sure she was at her locker to get her shit to leave, like one of those kind of guys. He would blow her phone up hundreds of times a day while she's in school, while she's at work, while she's at home, while she's at practice, because he felt like she needed to answer the phone when he called her. And then when it came to friends, in our friend group, it was 3 girls and it was about 8 boys in this friend group. Majority of us went to school together. But these guys are really like our brothers. Like, we grew up with them a little bit for a few years. And once they noticed that he was basically harassing her, one of our friends decided to start picking up the phone. Well, actually, multiple of them. They're like, I'm picking up the phone. I'm going to answer because he's not going to keep harassing you, right? He would text her crazy things. He would call her crazy bitches, like all types of crazy stuff out his mouth. And my homeboys was like trying to stop it. They would answer the phone and they'd be, playing games in this nigga face, basically, And she didn't care after a certain point because she's like, fuck it. Like, this man is going to keep harassing me, right? So fast forward, he's still stalking her, right? I'm going to jump over a whole bunch of little altercations that they had. But in the end, he ended up passing away. And Eddie passed away because of a cancer, I believe. And she felt some type of way because he never told her that he was sick. And then she felt bad because she was like, maybe that's why he was being so fucking clingy with me, is because he knew that he was ill, but he didn't want to tell me that he was ill. But it was like she wasn't being a dismissive girlfriend. Like, she's a Leo. She's on that shit. But he really was just acting crazy. He ended up passing away from this illness, and it was bad. When he passed away, he called me, she cried about it, everything like that. And then one day I was sitting on FaceTime with her and, she had her phone set up. She was doing her makeup and shit at her vanity. And I see this shadow of a head right here. So I'm like, at first I didn't say anything. At first I kept just looking at the camera, and she was like, bitch, why do you keep, what are you looking at? And I'm like, there's somebody standing behind you. It's a spirit standing behind you. She was straight like, oh, fuck no. No, I don't mess with demons. Da, da, da. Like, she's one of them. Like, as soon as you mention it, bitch, get out now. And I started to realize that it was getting a little agitated and that it kept peeking around from behind her head and everything. And he kept trying to knock shit out her hand. And it was like, I started to pick it up more while I was sitting on FaceTime with her, and I could see his face, and I'm like, oh, the shape of it, that's the exact shape of his fucking head, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't tell her, I'm like, yeah, that's Eddie, that's, I could tell, he's trying to knock shit out her hand and get her attention, and he's mad that he can't get her attention, right? Because I started getting a vision of, every time she would come into her room or she would grab stuff, he would be standing there in her room yelling at her, trying to get her attention, and she didn't see him. And he thought that she was just ignoring him. He didn't know he was dead either. He thought that she was just ignoring him. He even went as far as to try to grab her leg and pull her off the bed. But there's another medium who my best friend's godmother just so happens to be a medium, and she also told me that I'm a natural born medium and that I have more gifts than she had at my age. And at the time that we had met, she was in her later 40s and I was 20 years old. So, once I told my best friend what Eddie was doing in her house, she went and she talked to her godmother about it. Now, her godmother is a Christian medium. She's a prayer warrior, but she sees spirits. She sees spirits, she talks to spirits, she helps spirits, she does a lot of things in that area. Her areas are kind of different from mine, but she operates out of the Bible with what she's coming from. But we basically had to pull him out of the house and put him in her godmother's house, so he wouldn't try to keep haunting her, because it was starting to become oppressive, like the situation that I spoke about previously with one of my friends who passed away. Once we got him out of the house and we trapped him in her godmother's house, me and her godmother had to keep in contact with each other so we could make sure from both sides of the fence that this was being handled. I was getting a lot more intuitive downloads than she was. She was just able to see the spirits. She wasn't able to understand things about them. I get a lot of intuition when it comes to spirits, and I get downloads, and I get images and visions in my mind, and I get sounds, and I get noises, and I get smells, and I get all types of different impressions that basically make me kind of draw out a picture or a sentence to tell you what's going on. So she would have to ask me, like, where in the house does she go, and what does she have to do, and stuff like that. And then when she would see it, she would see it. So he's now in her house. He's now in her room. She has her daughter staying with her, grandbabies, his dogs in there, everything. So she locked him in her room. She told me she put up a protection to make sure that he cannot leave her room. But then he started to torment her. So she kept contacting me about it. He would keep her up all night, pacing in her room, and she would call me. He would sit up in her room crying in the corner, and she would call me because it would wake her up from her sleep, and then she would have to sit with him all night. And the more that she told him that he couldn't leave, the angrier that he got. And this was only about like a week's worth of shit happening. So we cut off his portal. He could not leave that room at all. He started to get increasingly angry because he kept trying to go to my best friend, and he couldn't. So in turn, Eddie started trying to destroy her godmother's room, trying to throw stuff around the room and everything like that. We would be sitting and talking about this shit all the time. And I did some protection and prayer for him and with him, and he did not want to hear that shit. He did not want to hear. He didn't give a fuck what I was talking about. He was honestly very rude and very disrespectful to me when I tried to help him figure out where he was and what he was doing. It was definitely given, I don't give a fuck about none of that shit. I don't give a fuck about none of that shit. And I felt really bad because I'm like, sir, like, I'm trying to help you, right? He was just worried about my best friend. So my best friend's godmother calls me one night, and she's boo-hoo crying on the phone, right? I'm like, what's going on? She told me that she had prayed for Eddie and that she talked to him and that he still wasn't trying to understand that he was gone, that he had passed on. He wasn't trying to hear that. He thought that he was still here. He just couldn't understand how he was moving around, but he thought that she was just a random woman that locked him in her house. Like, he thought he was still alive. And she was really trying to get him to understand that he's gone and that he has to move on. And he was getting angrier every time she tried to tell him this because he didn't understand it. And ultimately, on the 7th day, when she called me and she was boo-hoo crying, she said, I couldn't help him. I couldn't help him. And I was like, what are you talking about? What happened? And she said, they took him. I said, who took him? The angels took him? She said, no. And she started crying so fucking hard. She said, I tried to help him. I tried to tell him. I tried to get him to understand, but he's just so angry. He didn't want to understand. And I watched the demons come and drag him to hell. And there was nothing I could do about it.
Tell me a story about a time that you know that you saw something, but you don't ever tell this story because you know that no one would.
I have a lot of these. Here's just one of them. And when I say a lot, I mean at least 10 that I can recall from the age of 4 to present day. And sharing them just feels, yeah, no one's going to believe me. So when I was about 16 years old, I was living in a place called Monroe, Michigan. And I went to a house party because I used to get in a lot of trouble and sneak out and do stuff like that. But anyway, I go to this house party and there's a bunch of people. It's some like Richie Rich Shishi person that I wasn't friends with in high school, but I had an older boyfriend, which was inappropriate. But anyway, there's this guy that comes in, okay? This man comes in. He is ethnically ambiguous. He's tall. He's muscular, fit, but like lean. He looks like a vampire. He looks like some Caribbean pseudo, I don't know, from around the world vibe. Something about him felt old. And at this time, you know, I'm afraid of my intuition and my gifts. I use them to keep myself safe, and my radar was going off. And so I'm literally in a circle of people, and it's like this guy walked in, and, you know, at that time I thought time slowed down because I thought maybe he's cute. No, in hindsight, everything slowed down because it did. And he was expected or something because he was bringing something. Anyway, this guy comes and I noticed time slow down. I feel like everything kind of feels muffled and strange. And I look at him and he's looking right at me, like looking at me, just looks at me, and it feels like longer than it should be because he just got there. Like, isn't he looking for someone else? And then it stops, and he's like, goes about the party, and it's almost like time went back to normal. And somebody's like, yo, did you hear what I said? And I was like, no. What were you saying? So as the night goes on, everybody seems to be progressively like, I don't know, like drunk or something. It was weird. Like, I know that they were partying and stuff, but I wasn't partaking in that. Like, there were certain things being passed around I didn't want to be involved in because it's not that I was a goody two shoes. I didn't feel safe to do those kind of things with those people. So I'm hanging out, and then I go into the kitchen, and of course it's Mr. Vampire Werewolf, whatever he is, dude, and two other people, and they're talking, and I come in, and then somebody's like, yo, come over here, meet so and so. Do not remember his name. Cannot for the life of me. It's like it's been erased from my brain. So I go over and we start talking, and then somehow, which again, don't know how this happens, we get on the topic of supernatural stuff, ghosts of the area. We start talking about the Loup-Garou, which is like the Wolfman of like origin from Canada and France and from Louisiana. Like, there's different names for werewolves in different cultures, but specifically Loup-Garou comes up. Okay. And I talk about how I went on a tour in the old haunted part of where I lived. And in the historical tour, they made jokes about the Loup-Garou and how it was still around. And people from the Civil War era saw it. And it would come around at night, and they'd have to leave like raw meat outside and all this shit. And so I unwillingly, just for some reason, blurted out the words, oh, I'm pretty sure that there's one that's around my house in the woods behind my house, because I've seen something that I can't explain. And then now my brothers and I have had shared dreams of this like wolf or wild dog or werewolf thing. And we didn't know about each other's dreams until we shared them. Okay. So as I'm saying this, I can feel homeboy, the one that, I'm getting the creeps right now talking about it. I can feel the guy who, again, I don't know how old he is. I don't know I know he's older than me, but he seems old, like internally old. I can feel his like ears stand up. Like it's a genuine, like something about this conversation got his attention. Like, it really got his attention to where he's like, how would you know that? And that's what he said. He's like, how do you know they look like that? And I was like, I don't know how I know. I'm saying I saw it. And he goes, why do you think it let you see it? And I'm like, that's a weird question to ask. Why would you ask that? He goes, because something like that, if it wants to be seen, it will show itself to you. No one's ever really seen one unless it wants to be seen. And I was like, how do you know? And he goes, how do you think I know? I was like, shut up. The next thing that he said is what I just will never forget. And it's weird. And he goes like, you're all going to be like, what are you talking about? He goes, when you were a kid and you would look out the passenger side of the window as the car was going really fast, and you would see or imagine in your mind the thing that's jumping from object to object to keep pace with your car. He goes, that's one of them. And if you saw it, then they let you see them. They follow you because they're protecting you. What? What? So I, of course, am like, how did you know that I used to do that? And he goes, I just know. I was like, okay. And I didn't know how to exit the conversation, so I made up an excuse to like go to the garage. And even though I left the room, I had to leave that party in the middle of the whole thing because I felt like no matter where I went, that somehow that guy was following me or watching me. And every time I think of him, or like even now I've brought him up, I can see like he turns into like, it's like his face can turn into a wolf. And it's very much like, it reminds me of things that people in my family told me to stay away from. Like, you don't do this type of magic. You don't try to transform into animals. You don't do things for personal gain. Like, there's just a lot of, it just reminds me of one of those. It reminds me of, some people talk about the skinwalker. This one reminds me more of a different legend that I don't want to talk about either because it gives me the heebie-jeebies. But anytime I see crows, anytime I see wolves, and anytime I see my guide, which is the spider, I know to pay attention because of this story. Like, this is where it all started for me and solidified that animals are messengers and animals will be attracted to certain types of energies. And if you ever meet a wolfman or a lichen or a loup-garou or something that is a hybrid, you'll know and you won't be able to forget it. So that's my story.
One time in my 20s, I was dating a dude who sold his soul to the... And I didn't believe him at first. And then things just started getting super weird. So he would come over to my apartment. And one night we had like this fight because he was doing some unsavory things. He wouldn't get a job. And I was working like 60 hours a week. He came over and we got in this big fight. And then we were like, you know what, I was like, you know what, let's just go to bed. Let's like sleep on this. Let's talk about it in the morning. I shit you not, I lay down, I close my eyes, I look up, and there are 4 like black beings swirling around my ceiling. I'm like, what the world? I look out towards my window. There's a male figure standing at my window. And I'm like, you guys, so I've seen ghosts before. So I was like, you all are not welcome here. You need to leave. Get out. Blah, blah. And really creepy in this like really, I'm going to try to do it, voice. He was like, they're here for me. They're upset for me that you're treating me the way you are. And I knew at that point he wasn't fucking kidding when he said that. He sold his... So he, he's like getting really angry with me because I'm telling his friends, demons, to leave. And I look over to my window, or I look over to my door of my room that is cracked open, and there is, and I've never seen this before in my life, my blood ran cold. I haven't seen it since. This is the first time ever. There is a half man with like a goat's face or something with like the ram ears. I don't know what it was, like the ram horn things, standing with like red eyes, standing in my door frame, and I'm literally still getting chills to this day. This has been 10, 12 years, and I still am shocked by what happened. And so I'm like, I tell the guy, I say, I am so sorry. I love you. Like, I was mad. I didn't mean any of it. Like, absolutely. And yeah, when we broke up, I had to get a hotel room and stay out of my house because I was scared he would kill me, because he said he would kill me if I left him. So super good, but that is insane, right? Ooh.
What type of being did this guy meet? And what, you know what? I don't want to say anymore. I want you to watch it. You guys have been tagging me in this like crazy the past couple days, and you need to watch it. Like, definitely watch it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I need to know what everybody thinks. Had my mouth open like this at the end.
Y'all seen that story about that Uber or Lyft driver that met the vampire in New Orleans? That story made me think about a story that happened to me that was similar, but it was in Atlanta. This happened a while ago. I was super young, and the details of the stories don't show y'all how long ago this was. This was in a time where it was just becoming cool to meet people online. Like, you would meet new people on MySpace and be like, oh, they live in the same area. Shoot, let's hang out, let's chill, whatever. This was also during the time where I was on this spiritual, like supernatural kind of awakening time. And everything on my page was talking about like spiritual, supernatural stuff and whatever. So naturally, I would have interesting conversations with people who were like into the same thing. This kid hit me up who was about the same age as me, I think maybe a little bit older, and was asking me, hey, did you read about this? Did you read about this? Have you heard about this? And all the stuff he was talking about, I was like, nah, I never heard of that. Wow, whoa, it's crazy. So we would always have these crazy conversations until we got to the point where he was like, you should come hang out. I got some stuff I could show you, like, that I've done and that I've seen. You should come chill. I'm like, what? Yeah. This is about to put into perspective how long ago this was. So to get to his house, I had to print out directions on MapQuest, which was, yeah. At the time I was living with my best friend who's like my brother, and I used his mom's car so I could go. I was like, hey, I'm gonna go hang out with a friend or whatever. She was like, cool, whatever. So I printed the directions out, drove to the house. I pull up to this house, and it is a mansion, like the biggest house I think I've ever seen. And as the gate is open and he's walking down the driveway, he's like, what's up? I'm like, what's up? What do your parents do? Just kind of like, oh, yeah, they're into everything. They're not in town right now, whatever. When I tell you it was like a circle driveway, it had like Bentleys and like all kind of expensive cars in the driveway. And I'm just kind of like nervous because this is the first time that I've ever been around money like that. We walk into the house through this huge ass garage, and the house has this weird feeling. It like feels homey, but feels expansive at the same time, like a warehouse. It was the weirdest feeling. I can't really put my finger on it, but it felt vast and at the same time cozy. This is where it starts getting. As we go through the house, each room is themed to like a different period of humanity. I'm talking like big suits of armor in one room, and then it's like Asian inspired stuff and ancient stuff. And I'm like, so do your parents collect things? Or at this point, I'm like, what's happening in here? We're walking through all these rooms, and we finally get to a hallway that looks just like any other house, any other hallway. His room was to the right. There was a restroom to the straight ahead, and then branches off to the left to other rooms and stuff. Normal. This is where it kind of linked to the other girl story. And what made me think about this again was I remember the details, but I don't remember the details. Like, I remember we talked about socials, birth certificates. He was telling me how to use my brother's birth certificate to get him out of jail. Other kind of secrets about the country, the world, all kind of stuff I remember, but don't remember. I remember what he looks like, but I can't quite remember what he looks like. I remember what he sounds like. I remember what the room looked like. I remember what the bathroom looked like. And let me tell y'all about what I found in that bathroom. So this is what made me start going on a rabbit hole and researching things, because it was this big book. It was a huge, I don't even think I've ever seen a book this big, but it was like leather bound. You could tell it was really old. When I opened the book, on the first page were like these drawings, and it was these beings, and it was kind of like a family tree type thing. And the first one was saying like, this is this being, and then this is this being's kids, and then this is whatever. These beings looked like us, but pitch black. And these were drawings in the beginning. So the beginning of the book was drawings. They were pitch black, like the color black. All you could see was eyes. I'm flipping through the pages, and I'm feeling like I'm invading privacy. I'm seeing something I'm not supposed to see. And as I'm flipping through the book, it's saying names of what these beings are, who they are, like description of who they are. It was like biographies, but very short descriptions. And I can't really remember details, but I do remember as the book got further, it became less of drawings and more of pictures. And once it started becoming pictures, I got scared. I grabbed the book and I take it out there, and I'm like, what is this? What is this? He goes, oh, that's the book of Anu, the Anunnaki. It shows you who all the Anunnaki are up to this day. Some of humanity comes from them. It's kind of like a story of God and the angels and blah, blah, blah. What? Mind you, we had a full-fledged conversation after that. I remember I was there for quite some time after that, and I remember him explaining it to me, going through the pages and talking, but I don't remember none of that. It's like I'm looking at a memory on mute. I came to it, and I remember getting back into my car, and like immediately after I left, I called my brother while I was on the way, and I was like, you'll never believe this, blah, 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 because we were both on this supernatural spiritual journey. I'm like, he said this, da, da, da. My brother's like, I want to meet him too. I'm like, yeah, I think, yeah, you can meet him too. In like hours, I've been gone for, I don't even know how long, and I'm telling him more and more stuff about the stuff I remember, and he's like, I want to meet him. I'm like, bet, I got these directions I printed from MapQuest. Let's go tomorrow. I'm sure he's not going to carry his parents out of town right now. This is where it gets all the way crazy. So the next day, we followed the directions that were printed on MapQuest back to that same place. We get there, it's an open field. Nothing's there.
I'm gonna go with alien, but what happened to the house? Where did the house go?